So Stephen F. Austin has just received permission from Augustin de Iturbide to settle American colonists in Texas, and it's looking like his money-making scheme is about to come to fruition. All he's got to do is go back to Texas, start getting these Americans who are basically lining up to go to Texas, sign off on them, and then start plotting out the lands and, having them pay money to him for serving as a liaison to the New Mexican government. Looks like everything is going according to plan. Well, almost immediately after meeting with Iturbide, Stephen F. Austin is going to learn that Iturbide has been overthrown by the Federalists. As we mentioned, Iturbide was a centralist, had centralized authority around himself and Mexico City. Central government has most of the power. Well, the Federalists, who thought that most of the power should be in the states, didn't like the direction of the government, and what they're going to do is recruit the help of this Spanish, or formerly Spanish, Mexican military officer. He's actually a Criollo, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, to help them overthrow Iturbide. So Santa Anna had been born into a prominent family outside of Veracruz. He'd actually been initially, as a young man, prominent royalist. He had served under Arredondo. He'd gone up with Arredondo to Texas and helped defeat the Gutierrez de Lara. Actually by that time Gutierrez de Lara had left, but the Republican Army of the North, Santa Anna was in the Royalist Army who had defeated them. He'd overseen executions in Texas, and he'd watched as Arredondo basically destroyed the revolution within Texas. And so Santa Anna was a Royalist, but shortly after serving under Arredondo, Santa Anna is going to have a change of heart, like Iturbide has a change of heart. Both these guys will decide it's time for independence for Mexico. Both of them will defect from the Royalists, and they're going to start supporting the insurgency, and Santa Anna will join Iturbide in helping drive the Spanish off. So Santa Anna started as a Royalist, switched sides, fought for independence, fought for Augustin de Iturbide. Well, by 1823, Santa Anna is going to have another change of heart. At this point, Federalists are going to be making the argument that Iturbide has taken on too much power, his centralist government simply not effective. So Santa Anna will join these Federalists, and he will help overthrow Iturbide and force him to go into exile, leaving Mexico. He actually has to flee to Europe, and we'll see this new government is going to take over. Now, exactly what type of government it's going to be is going to take a little while, but the main question that's going to come up to Stephen F. Austin is, wait a minute, I just made this new contract with Iturbide's government. That's now been overthrown. This new government's about to form. Is my contract valid with them? Again, he just had this problem with Spain, so I got the Mexican government to reapprove the government that Spain had approved. Now I've got to get this new Federalist government to reapprove colonization. So he's going to have this issue about whether or not this thing is valid. So he learns about this shortly after he returns to North America. Well, the issue of whether or not his contract is going to be valid is going to come up in something called the Convention of 1824. What this basically is every province, so Texas would be a province, or now it's a state, I take that back. Every state is going to have to send delegates to write a new Federalist Constitution. So being a state, Texas is going to have to elect delegates. They're going to have to go write this new Constitution now that the centralist government is no longer valid. Well, Stephen F. Austin, again, he just arrived back in Texas, and he's going to learn about this overthrown government. He's going to be somewhat exhausted, because, hey, does my new contract, is it valid? But he also likes the prospect of more power being in Texas than it is in Mexico City. So when Stephen F. Austin, by the way, when he arrives in Texas, he's going to find some Americans have already started moving in. So he'd sent out those newspaper advertisements telling Americans, hey, I'm planning to form this colony here. I'm going to get permission. Some Americans before Stephen F. Austin had taken off or even returned had started moving in here. So by the time he gets back, and starts mapping out the land to start dividing among colonists, some people are already here and saying, hey, basically, I hope you approve of me. I already moved here with my family. But anyway, he gets back here. Now he and the Tejanos are going to have to figure out, who do we send for our delegate to this new convention of 1824. This is an early picture, by the way, of Stephen F. Austin. He's basically going to form a little office, and you're going to have these early settlers set up their homes, and soon Stephen F. Austin will start dishing out the land in his colony. Well, the Tejanos and the handful of Americans that have arrived, 1823, 1824, will choose Erasmus Seguin to be their representative. So Erasmus Seguin, this prominent Tejano, and this friend of Stephen F. Austin. He'd welcome the American Stephen F. Austin into Texas, and so Stephen F. Austin is incredibly happy when Juan Seguin is chosen to be Texas's representative to write this new government for Mexico. Well, Austin will meet with Seguin, and he's going to say, listen, I'm not going to go back down to Mexico City again. You're going to go for me, but I want you to get permission from this new federalist government as you're writing this new constitution. Make sure they put a provision in the constitution that allows further American immigration. So I've only got a couple families in here. I want to get a lot more. Maybe I want to get more than 300, maybe another colonization contract after that. I want you to go down there and basically fight for us, fight for American colonization, support us. He's also going to say, Iturbide had approved slavery. I want you to make sure that this new government approves slavery as well, or at least doesn't say anything about African slavery. We think that in order to get more Americans in here, and again, Stephen F. Austin would say more Americans requires more slavery, or requires slavery, then in order to make more money, we've got to get not only immigration improved, but we also have to get slavery approved. So go down there, push for these things. Well, Erasmus Seguin, he will head off to Mexico City, and at this convention of 1824, he's going to bring up Stephen F. Austin's concerns, and so he's basically going to meet at this convention with a number of delegates from the other states of Mexico, and they're going to hammer out this new constitution. You can kind of think of it similar to the constitution written in 1787, where all the colonies sent their own representatives, and they wrote this new form of government. Well, the government they're going to write is going to be embodied in something called the Constitution of 1824. Constitution of 1824 is going to be a federalist document, so it's going to decentralize power. We'll talk about that more in a second. But because of Erasmus Seguin's lobbying, it says nothing about slavery. Now, here's the thing with Federalists. Centralists, a lot of them were almost like Spaniards in a sense that they liked the strong authority. A lot of them were criollos, elites who didn't care about racial equality. A lot of Federalists do. But basically what Seguin is going to get them to say is, all right, I'm not talking about Indian equality. I'm talking about a small segment of the population in the North, an area that, we need people in, and the only people we can get in to move into this area and make it productive are Americans. The thing that they're going to bring in is cotton, and they believe that you need slavery to grow cotton. So can we please avoid slavery or permit slavery in this new Texas area? Well, a lot of the Federalists are the guys who are more for social equality. There's some people that say, no, this would be going against this promise that we made of racial equality, one of the things we fought against Spain about. But others are going to point to the fact that there's not very many blacks in Mexico, and in other areas they've pretty much been freed already. So this small area, maybe it's okay there. Again, there are going to be some people that are very anti-slavery, and they're going to say, I don't like that idea. So what will happen in the Constitution of 1824 is they're not going to allow slavery, but they're not going to not allow it either. So what they're going to do is say nothing about slavery. Basically, leave the matter essentially up to states. So Seguin doesn't get them to say slavery's okay, but he gets them to say it's not okay either. Or you know what I'm saying. He basically says it says nothing about slavery one way or another. which Seguin, and as we'll talk about, Austin, will take as a victory because it basically puts it in the state's hands whether or not to allow African slavery. So that's going to be one thing that Seguin does. As far as further American colonization and is Austin's colonization contract valid, the Constitution of 1824 will say, yes, Austin's contract is valid. You can continue to bring in the rest of your 300 families. But what it will say is, as far as future settlement, and Austin believes that, he wants additional colonization contracts. He thinks it's going to fill his 300 families quickly, so he wants to get more contracts. He thinks in order to fill those contracts, you basically have to have promises of future immigration. So he wants the government to say, yes, your contract's approved, and we're going to continue to approve contracts in the future. More contracts in the future approved. Americans will say, okay, well, my relatives can move in as well. I feel like I can come in. So Stephen F. Austin's hoping for that. Well, the Constitution of 1824 gives Austin permission, but what it does is it's going to say future colonization contracts will be in the hands of states. So state governments that are set up, so states are going to write their own constitutions. They will decide whether or not to allow more colonizers from the United States or perhaps Europe or things like that. So this isn't the government's responsibility. So you can look at these two provisions in two ways. This is Erasmus Seguin getting the government, this newly set up government, to do what he wants and put these provisions in the Constitution, or not put the provisions in the Constitution. Or you can simply look at this as a federalist document. This basically saying slavery is a matter of the local governments, state governments, and then colonization contracts are a matter of the state governments. So either way, the way that Erasmus Seguin and Austin are going to look at this is, yeah, we're getting exactly what we want. This is fantastic. So they are happy as far as this regard. So things are going their way so far. State will decide it. Well, there's going to be something that is not going to go their way. One of the things that this Convention of 1824 will decide is that, sure, this is going to be decided at the state level, but what we're going to do is actually take away Texas's statehood. So under Spain, Texas had been its own province here. Well, the convention, the members of the Convention of 1824 will determine Texas is too small of a population to serve as its own state. So you've got other states down here with hundreds of thousands of people. Why would it make sense if we're having a government where, states are going to occasionally meet, send their delegates there? That would give Texas a lot more representation for individual people. So 4,000 people, if they get the same say in the central government as, place with 100,000 people, that doesn't make sense. So what they're going to do is say, we're going to attach Texas to a more populated province. So they're going to create this awkwardly named state, Coahuila y Texas. So we'll have the state government be centered here in Saltillo, and Texas, you can make the rules, but you're going to be making the rules along with the people here. So you can make the rules about slavery, you can make the rules about future American colonization, but you're going to have to be deciding with the people of Coahuila over here. Now, this is going to be a problem because for Americans, because our future colonization or Austin's plans in the future, because Coahuila's got 10 times the population of Texas in 1824. So when the state government meets to decide things, that means that Coahuila is basically going to have 10 times the say as Texas because they have 10 times the people. Other issue is that the Saltillo is physically far away from Texas. So the people of Coahuila aren't going to be facing the same problems as Texas. They're not going to be seeing, what Austin's doing, understanding what he's doing. Economic conditions are different. There's still Indian attacks, things like that in Coahuila, but it's different than what's happening in Texas. So basically, we're going to be outnumbered 10-1. It's going to be hard to travel to this area. The people of Coahuila are not going to have the same ideas or same knowledge of what's going on in Texas as people in Texas do. But again, Austin and Seguin are somewhat enthused because they think that maybe we'll have enough say with the people of Coahuila that they'll give us the colonization contracts that we need and continue to allow slavery. So Seguin will return. This Constitution of 1824 is going to go into effect. Again, more power in the state governments. State governments will decide slavery, and state governments are going to decide whether we're going to have future American colonization. But Texas is joined to Coahuila. And again, Coahuila much more populous than Texas, so it's going to have some 10-to-1 whenever this state government of Coahuila is set up. Well, now that everybody leaves the Convention of 1824, we now have this Constitution of 1824 set up. Now it's going to be up to the states to write new state constitutions and elect new delegates. Well, when Coahuila, Texas elects delegates, again, because 10-to-1 population, most of the delegates are going to come from Coahuila. The delegate that's going to come from Texas is going to be Juan Seguin. He will be chosen as the delegate. Now, this is going to be on a temporary basis because Coahuila, Texas has to write a new state constitution, but until that time, Seguin will serve Texas as its representative. So, once this comes back, Austin hears the news. Saltillo's down here. Again, they elect Erasmus Seguin. He's going to go down to Saltillo periodically to meet with the state legislature. And Austin is going to start bringing in his families. He's got permission now bringing in these families. The way this would work is that families are going to start arriving in Texas. So you would be a family that has enough money to pay the 12.5 cents per acre to Austin. You're going to gather together all of your belongings. Actually, first you send a letter to Austin, send letters of good character. He will send a letter of approval, and he's going to say, bring everything with you. I've already carved out a portion of land for you. Go on in, come on into Texas. And so these families will start packing their things up. They'll set off from the United States. They'll travel down to San Felipe de Austin, which is going to be where Austin sets up his office and where sort of the heart of his colony is going to be. And his colony, it's going to be this area initially. And when you come in, you meet with Austin. He's going to basically show you a map. This is your land. It goes up to this creek here. This is, it goes down to this creek over there. You can do whatever you want with the land. If you have a wife, here's additional acreages. Children, here's additional acreage for your slaves. And so Stephen F. Austin will start handing out this land. And you pay Stephen F. Austin the money. He's serving as the liaison with the Mexican government. And at this point, kind of the Coahuila, Texas government. And then you're going to set off to start building your house, things like that. So, again, looks like things are going to be running well. And actually, they are going to be running well because Stephen F. Austin starts making sure that the families who come in are going to be Catholic, or at least pretend to be Catholic. He's going to make sure that they do declare an oath of loyalty to the new Constitution of 1824, and he's going to say, you guys really need to do your best to start learning Spanish, things like that. Well, this is going to be really happy to the Tejanos because, again, you're going to start seeing these plantations set up, and you'll start seeing the economy of Texas grow. And again, the Coahuila Texas legislature, before they sign their state constitution temporarily, they'll reapprove Stephen F. Austin's colonization contract. So things go well with Stephen F. Austin. And as a matter of fact, the start going so well, as a matter of fact, that in 1824, they're going to start approving other Americans to come in to bring, a number of families with them. So they'll bring a guy named Hayden Edwards. They'll let him start settling Americans over here. Green DeWitt over here. And they'll start allowing these guys to move in as well. So, and as a matter of fact, Stephen F. Austin, he's going to quickly fill up his first 300 families, and he's going to be given an additional contract of land for additional 300 families to settle them. Ben Milam over here. And so, actually, they'll approve one colonization contract from somebody from within Mexico itself. So Coahuila, Texas, sees Austin, sees that he's being successful, sees that the economy starts improving, and so they say, all right, we'll do this to other Americans as well. They also actually approve those Cherokees settling up here as well, the small group of Cherokees, although, again, the paperwork's going to be a little bit of question over that. So things start going well, okay? Well, things are going to go so well that we'll see these Americans start helping the people of Texas, the Tejanos, with a number of problems they've been facing with Indians. So as Stephen F. Austin and his family start moving in, and then as other colonizers start getting their contracts and start moving people in, there's going to obviously become issues with the Indians that claim this area as their own. So if you remember, the Indians that live here along the coast, this is primarily Karankawas. These guys had stayed largely independent of San Antonio. Oh, by the way, here's a additional land settlements, some other places. Nacogdoches will get reestablished by Hayden Edwards. You'll start to see families given land out here. Cherokees will basically be allowed to settle up here. You're going to see a different colonizer around here in Gonzales. And this is just a couple of the settlements. As these colonization contracts are approved, you'll see a number of other smaller settlements start to be established in this area, especially in the cotton growing land in the East Texas. So again, as people start moving in, there's going to be issues with Karankawas. What we'll see is the Karankawas, hey, now there's a family saying this land is theirs, land that I traditionally migrate across. Again, the Karankawas, these are the semi-sedentary group that plant crops part of the year, and then the other part of the year they go to the coast and grow this food. Generally, they've been hostile towards the Spanish, although they had this understanding for the last couple decades. Basically, you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. But now Americans are moving onto their land, and this is going to lead to conflict as Americans say, hey, you can't travel on our land. Well, this isn't your land. Well, you know, it is my land. The Mexican government gave it to me. And you'll see the Karankawas, as they're being cut off from certain areas, what they'll do is they'll start taking cattle from the Americans. This will lead Americans to, how do we respond to these guys? Well, first time we're going to see this happen, it's going to be 1823, 1824, as Austin's starting to begin his settlement. What he's going to do is he's going to form a group to basically deal with some Karankawas that have been stealing some of his settlers' cattle. So what he's going to do is he's going to form this group of just citizens of his colonies. So just think of this as just a couple people that are some of the early settlers here. He's going to say, hey, anybody that has horses, I'll offer you a little bit of money. We've got these Karankawas that are attacking some of our settlers down here. They've been stealing their cattle. We want to punish them for stealing their cattle. So he's going to say, anybody who wants a little bit of cash that can help us deal with this, we're forming a ranger company. And so in 1823, the first time the word Texas Rangers is used is going to be just this group that Stephen F. Austin hires on a temporary basis to deal with Karankawas. These rangers will set off against the Karankawas, and they will punish this group for, again, stealing cattle on land that they believe is theirs. This will be the first of many attacks, by the way, because as settlers continue to move in, Karankawas are going to be put in a very bad place. They have to deal with people, again, taking their land, and whenever they try to retaliate or whenever they try to get cattle or whatever, then the Stephen F. Austin or another group will call up and form these ranger militia groups and come after them. And as a matter of fact, what we're going to see beginning 1823, 1824, as if these first Americans move in, continuing 1820s, is the Karankawas will become subject of so much attacks that their population is going to start being reduced pretty significantly. And very quickly, they're going to have to start moving further and further south. Different bands of the Karankawas will essentially go extinct to the point where by the mid-1830s, there are almost no Karankawas left, and the handful that are left are going to end up moving out of Texas down here to northern Mexico. But by the 1850s, even that group is going to be essentially extinct. So we start seeing people move in when these colonizers move in, again, beginning with Stephen F. Austin, but then continuing through the 1820s and 1830s, they're going to start attacking these Karankawas, okay? It's not just the Karankawas. We'll see these rangers groups being formed to retaliate against Comanche and Apache attacks. So as settlers continue to move in, we'll see the Comanches and Apaches. They had promised the Mexican government that they would behave, that they would, not attack anyone, but because of Iturbide getting overthrown, because of problems, the overthrow of the government, because the government can't afford to pay this tribute, the Apaches and Comanches will begin attacking, and they're going to start attacking some of these new colonists, and they're going to continue to attack San Antonio, which they've been doing in the 18-teens, briefly stopping at the beginning of the 1820s, but then picking up again in the mid-1820s. And so now we have these people under attack. Well, what the new coming Americans will start doing, and a lot of these guys are better armed than the Mexicans could be, bringing some of these firearms manufactured within the United States. They'll start forming ranger battalions. Again, don't think of them as rangers as like a major group. It's just temporary guys with guns. They'll start setting off and retaliating against Comanches, Apaches, things like that. As a matter of fact, you'll see some of these rangers even going into the interior of the plains and attacking the Comanches and Apaches at their homes, something that the Spanish had trouble doing because they didn't have the finances for it, and then the Mexican government hasn't tried yet up to this point. So this is going to be looked at highly by the Tejanos in San Antonio. These guys are helping us with these Apaches and Comanches, something that, again, Spain had trouble doing. I mean, they paid them off for a while, but they hadn't been helping during the War of Independence, and up to this point, the Mexican government hadn't helped them. So these colonists, not only coming in and Stephen F. Austin making sure that they're speaking Spanish, that they're trying to adopt to Spanish customs or Mexican customs, not only is he making sure they're Catholic, but they're also helping us fight Indians. So I want you to think about this early years of colonization, 1823, 1824, 1825, as being fairly positive. And some of these other colonizers, again, it's not just Stephen F. Austin, but we see some of these other guys come in as well. They're going to be doing the same thing, at least early on. So things seem to be going very well early years. Again, colonists behaving themselves, colonists helping with Indians. What you're going to see, though, by 1826 is there's a couple issues that are going to pop up involving these colonists. And this is going to be very problematic because at the end of 1826, the Saltillo government, or the government in Saltillo, the Coahuila, Texas government, is going to say, all right, next year we're going to be writing a new state constitution. Now that we're Coahuila, Texas, we need a new state constitution. Well, 1827 is coming up, end of 1826. We start to see a number of problems with these new settlers. As more and more Americans come in, the American settlers are going to start to say, why do I need to become Catholic? Why do I need to learn Spanish when there are other Americans around me? So the first handful of settlers, colonists coming in, Stephen F. Austin is making sure they're doing this. Well, a couple of these other colonizers not as ardent as Stephen F. Austin, and a couple of these other colonizers don't have the connections with the Tejanos in San Antonio like Stephen F. Austin does. And then a number of these other guys, just, as you start coming in, as the family that moves next to you, not Tejanos, there's a lot of people that speak English, American ancestry, ties to the United States move in. A lot of people start saying, what's the point of going through the process of declaring loyalty to Mexico? And you actually start seeing some people moving in illegally. So you start to begin to see in 1826, some people start skirting the rules. Now, again, Austin's keeping control of his colonists, making them adapt, become Mexican, but some people aren't, and some people are allowing essentially squatters to come in. So maybe a colonizer gets this chunk of land here, allows this family, they convert to Catholicism, they do everything right, but then their cousin hears they've got extra land, he moves in with his family, and he's there illegally, and again, he doesn't see any reason to declare loyalty to Mexico or learn Spanish or become Catholic. We start to see these illegal colonists start coming in here. And this is going to become an issue, and especially going to become an issue because, again, 1827, we're about to have this new state constitution written, and again, the state government, Coahuila, Texas, is going to be responsible for determining what happens with slavery and immigration. Well, one of the guys who was one of these colonizers who's not going to be very wary of issues, as ardent as Stephen F. Austin in keeping colonizers in check, is the guy named Hayden Edwards, who had taken over this area right here, received a colonization contract for East Texas. Well, Hayden Edwards, land speculator from the United States. He'd been a land speculator in Mississippi, bought land from the United States government, sold it to smaller settlers, made a lot of money that way. He had gone to the government of Coahuila, Texas in 1825 after seeing Stephen F. Austin successfully colonize people in his colony. He wanted to make money doing the exact same thing. The Coahuila, Texas government said, sure, you can do it. You can have this area, Far East Texas. You can settle this region. This area, this is going to be Edwards. We'll talk about why it's not Edwards in just a minute here. But he had started settling here. Well, there's going to be a major issue because a lot of the people in this area were those who used to live at Nacogdoches but had run out of Texas. A lot of Tejanos had run out of Texas following Arredondo's purge. Well, now that Mexico is independent, a lot of these guys started moving back to Nacogdoches and reclaiming land that they and their family had lived on for the past couple decades. Well, Hayden Edwards is going to look at that situation in East Texas, and he's going to say, well, no, this land is mine. The government, state government, Coahuila, Texas, said I could settle whoever I wanted here, and he's going to start saying, you have to leave. Well, this is going to become an issue with some of these people here. No, this is my land. I have title to it. No, this is my contract. I'm going to sell this to an American coming in or give this to an American coming in. And Edwards will petition the government of Coahuila, Texas, to tell the people to get out. Basically, he's going to say, you gave me this contract, 1826. These people, by 1826, there's this dispute. Well, the government of Coahuila, Texas will say, nope, Hayden Edwards, we're going to respect that these people own this land. So this portion around Nacogdoches, you cannot sell. So you can still have control. You can still be an impresario colonizer for the rest of it, but you cannot have this portion around Nacogdoches. Well, Edwards is going to be furious over this, and he's going to complain. He's going to threaten the government of Coahuila, Texas. Well, this is going to lead the government of Coahuila, Texas, to send a group in to basically remove Hayden Edwards and tell him he no longer has permission to colonize East Texas anymore. Well, Hayden Edwards will learn about this, and he's going to decide, you know what, I'm not going to allow myself to be removed, and he's going to decide to break away and form what he's going to call Freedonia. So this area here, I don't have to listen to you guys anymore because this is going to be my own independent country, essentially. I'm declaring independence from Coahuila, Texas, and Mexico. In this area, I'm going to control myself. And he's basically going to say, I'm kicking out these families here, and then I'm going to rule this land. He actually talks with the Cherokees that have moved in, tries to get them to join. And he's going to form his settlement around this old stone house, which if you ever go to Sam Houston State University, you can see a recreation of it. And he's going to start writing a contract with his sons, or writing a constitution with his sons for this new Freedonia, where he's going to be the president of it. So right now we have an American impresario, same role Stephen F. Austin has now declared independence and formed a new independent government. Well, Stephen F. Austin is going to learn about this. What do you think he's thinking? Basically, he's thinking Edwards is messing things up. This guy is going to ruin things for the rest of us. We've got to stop him. And so right after Hayden Edwards declares this Republic of Freedonia, Stephen F. Austin is going to get his colonists. He's going to start calling up this militia. You're going to get other American colonizers do the same thing, the Tejanos in San Antonio, and they will send this militia out to defeat Hayden Edwards. So Stephen F. Austin basically looks at Hayden Edwards as messing up prospects for future colonization. They're about to write this new state constitution of Coahuila, Texas, and you're messing it up for the rest of us. And so these Americans and Tejanos are going to join together to attack Hayden Edwards at Freedonia. Well, as they make their way out to Freedonia, Hayden Edwards learns what's happening. He and his sons are going to quickly escape to back to the United States, and there's no fight over this. It's just basically Freedonia is going to go bust. It's just not going to happen. So at this point, As we're going to see, they'll just revoke Hayden Edwards' colonization contract. They'll give it to somebody else to colonize people from within Mexico. But probably the biggest effect of this is going to be that the Coahuila, Texas government, they see what's just happened, and this is going to make them nervous. Okay, Stephen F. Austin's been great. He's been bringing families in. They've been doing what they want to. But now we have Americans coming in. Some of them aren't learning Spanish. Some of them aren't loyal to Mexico. Some of them are coming in on illegal contracts. And this is obviously going to worry the government of Coahuila, Texas. So when they write this new state constitution, and by the way, when they write this is going to be written by delegates from around the state. So it's going to be done by population. So Texas, the only delegate they're going to get is going to be Erasmo Seguin. Their population is still lower than Coahuila's population. So Coahuila is going to get basically 10-1 delegates. Erasmo Seguin is going to be for Texas. Well, Erasmo Seguin is going to go to the state constitutional government, and he's going to advocate for further American immigration, no limitations on slavery. And what we're going to see is that the state government will continue to allow immigration, but they're going to put a restriction on slavery. What they're going to do is they're going to say, all right, we don't like what a lot of these Americans are doing. We're going to continue to allow immigration. We still have to approve it. Government has to approve it, and we're probably going to be more discerning when we hand out these contracts. But one of the things we don't like is this African slavery. A lot of people in the Coahuila part of Coahuila, Texas, are idealists. They, enlightened thinkers, and they say this is something we need to get rid of. Now they're going to say we don't want to get rid of it entirely. We understand that guys like Stephen F. Austin and the colonists that have come in with him. Again, I shouldn't say Stephen F. Austin. He doesn't own slaves, but all of his colonists had, and a lot of these loyal Americans had slaves. They don't want to punish them. So what they will say to these guys is, all right, you can keep your slaves. So any slaves brought into Texas in the next 6 months will stay slaves for life. But we're going to eventually try to get rid of slavery. So what we want is that after 6 months, no longer can slaves be brought in. Again, those can be slaves for life. But children born to those slaves at the age of 14, we're going to give them their freedom. So what they're hoping here is to make the Americans happy. The Americans are already in here happy. You can keep your slaves, and essentially your children will have slaves, at least for part of their lives. So this isn't something we're getting rid of immediately. It's just something we're going to start getting rid of in the future. Well, this is going to be the first of many things that there's going to be disagreements over. And so what we're going to talk about next time is how some of these agreements start to lead to this split between the American colonists and the government in Coahuila, Texas, and also the government in Mexico City.